Hey guys, welcome or welcome back. Today we're going to tier rank all of the books that I read in 2025. I read a whopping 19 books, and I just feel like it was a perfect number to sort of do this kind of tier ranking thing. And I've always wanted to try it, and now that I'm actually creating content, I feel like it was a perfect opportunity to try it out. Also, let me know if you've read any of these books, if you are wanting to read any of these books. I would love to hear from you guys. All right, let's just go through the tiers first. So at the very bottom, I have banned. What this means is just like it's banned from my brain, you know? Like I don't think books should be banned in general, just banned from my memory. The next tier up is put me in a reading slump. So these are books that are like they weren't the worst things, but kind of just brought me down a little bit, you know? Kind of made me want to not read, and that's very dangerous. It's a very bad thing to feel. Then the next tier up is I already forgot everything. So these are the books that are just like they're kind of mid. Like at this point, the only thing I remember about the book is that I read it. So they like really just didn't leave any kind of impression on me. The next tier up was like that was cool. I liked it, you know. Am I gonna be thinking about it constantly? No, probably not. But did I enjoy it while I was reading it? Yeah. And then the top tier is I will think about this on my deathbed. So these are the books that I just can't get out of my head. Like I am constantly thinking about them, or they just, random thoughts will pop into my head about them. They're like the books that I really, really loved this year. I've ordered these books in the order that I read them in 2025. So the first book that I read was Vicious by V. Schwab. And this is probably, if not my favorite, then one of my favorites of V. Schwab's. I did really also like the Darker Shade of Magic series. If you ask me right now, I think the Villain series. I keep saying the Villain series as if I read the second one, but I didn't. When I read this in 2025, it was actually a reread for me because I was trying to read the first one so that I could remember what happened so that I could read the second one. Then I didn't read the second one. So I've technically not finished the series. But the first time I read Vicious, I loved it a lot. I was obsessed. And then the second time, it was just even better. I love the characters. I love the way that she told the story, like the tone that she used, and all of the like little coincidences that kind of made the story so interesting. I don't know. I think really what did it for me was the characters. Like I just fell in love with the characters, all of them. Maybe even Eli. It's just such a good story. And I'm still like really upset with myself that I haven't read the second one, but that is on my TBR for this month. So maybe I will. Maybe I will. I like how I still don't believe that I'm actually going to read it. Yeah, I think this has to go in. We'll think about this on my deathbed because I do still think about this book quite a bit. The next book that I read in 2025 was The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. For those of you who don't know who L.M. Montgomery is, if you've heard of Anne of Green Gables, she is the author of those books as well. And I got this book in a subscription box. I didn't know what to expect going into it because I didn't know anything about this author or the story or anything, but it was actually really enjoyable. I thought it was really funny. I liked the style of writing. It's kind of like this girl who's just like always quiet and she's always kind of taken advantage of. She kind of finds out that she's going to die soon and she decides that she's not going to be quiet anymore and let people walk all over her. The events that occur from that are just really funny. I think I'm going to put this in That Was Cool. Then we read Trust of the Emerald Sea. Who's we? Next, I read Trust of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. This is my first Brandon Sanderson. I haven't read anything by him since, but I was kind of just testing the waters to see if I would like his books before committing to the whole like Cosmere universe. And I think it was pretty good. I mean, it's probably a little different than like the Mistborn saga, I'm assuming. It's more like a fairy tale, and I feel like less like your standard fantasy. So I feel like the writing style and the tone is going to be different with his other books. But I mean, overall, I did enjoy it. Thought it was cute. I think I gave it 5 stars, but I think I'm going to drop it in That Was Cool because I wasn't like obsessed with it or anything. I thought it was cute. It was a good story. I don't really think about it much anymore, rarely, unless I see the cover and then I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. That was kind of cute. Then I think I didn't read for like 3 or 4 months. I think I was reading in January, then February, March, April, I just stopped. Like I didn't pick up a book at all. I think what happened is that in January, I learned how to crochet. And then from that point, I got obsessed. And I think I just stopped reading as a hobby and I just started crocheting a lot. I started making so many things. I saved so many patterns. I bought so much yarn and it just like consumed all of my time, all of the free time that I had because I was also working. Yeah, so just haven't really been, I didn't read for like 3 or 4 months, which is why part of the reason why my books read in 2025 is so low. In May, I picked up Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. I had been wanting to read Lila Sage for a while because I was hearing a lot about her books, and people seem to really love them. And so I picked up Done and Dusted. It has a cute cover. Is that a good reason to pick up a book? I think that, no, probably not. Oh man, I did not like this book. I wish I could ban it from my memory. It was terrible. And I'm really sorry to say that, but like it was such a difficult book to read. Now normally like I don't mind like a bit of smut, or I don't even mind reading books that are primarily smut, but I don't know, Done and Dusted was like too much. I feel like there was barely any story. I feel like the entire thing was smut and I wasn't even enjoying it. Like it made me uncomfortable. And again, there's nothing wrong with smut. There's nothing wrong if, if that's all you read, then that's fine. If you really love it, that's fine. It's not my favorite genre, but I try to read everything. So like, I don't really have a bias, I feel like. Well, maybe I have a bias. I don't know. I've read other books that are like primarily smut, and I feel like I enjoyed those more. I don't know, this book is just like, maybe it was just not the right setting, or like, I don't really like cowboys either. So I don't know what I was thinking. Yeah, so I want to ban that from my memory. I don't want to remember it at all ever again. The next book that I read was The Hound of the Baskervilles by Arthur Conan Doyle, and this was again part of that subscription box. I had never read a Sherlock Holmes novel before. I watched the BBC version, which I really like. Honestly, I feel like it wasn't that bad. Why would I think it's bad? The story is also one of the stories that's kind of covered in the TV show, so I sort of knew what to expect with it. It wasn't going to be like anything new. I think it was all right. I mean, I sometimes forget that I even read it. It didn't wow me or anything, maybe because I already kind of knew what the story was going to be about and like what the conclusion was going to be. Basically, Sherlock Holmes is called to this like very countryside town area because what exactly happened in the book? I don't even remember. There's like this viscount or like some kind of estate owner, and he dies mysteriously. Apparently there's like this curse, and the grounds and like the land it's being passed down to his, nephew or something like that. And Sherlock Holmes is kind of called in to protect the next person who's inheriting this land, because they all believe that there's some kind of curse and there's like some kind of monster in the moors or something like that. He investigates, he figures it out. I don't think it's A tier, S tier at all. I mean, I'm surprised that I could even give you a synopsis of the book at all in any like capacity. But anyway, then I read Red Rising next. And I think between like Hound of the Baskervilles and Red Rising, I think I kind of fell off of reading again. I don't think I read a book for a few months. Oh man, Red Rising. It's such a good book. And it is a book that I think about quite a lot. So I'm going to put it in top tier. But the complaint I hear the most about it with science fiction is that there's too much science, or like the concepts are too hard to follow, and like people have a hard time getting into the story because there's so much that they don't understand. And I feel like Red Rising is not like that at all. It's just such a well-written story. It's good science fiction for someone who doesn't normally read science fiction or who doesn't normally like science fiction, because I feel like there's a lot of human emotion in this book too. I mean, I feel like there's barely any science in it really. There's some stuff about space, but for the most part you're really focusing on like Darrow and his story and his journey, and the Golds, and kind of like how society functions in their world and why it's so like fucked up. I'm gonna put this in. We'll think about this on my deathbed, because I do still think about this book. Like I think about certain scenes, the ones that are the most like heartbreaking and harrowing. The next book that I read was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. And I feel like this also is just, we're going to put this into, we'll think about this on my deathbed, because I still think about this book a lot. And especially after I've watched other people's analysis on this book, I'm just so obsessed. I understand why a lot of people don't like this book. A lot of people say that they don't understand the character's motivations for why he does what he does. But I feel like it makes so much sense. He's trying to build his worldview based on what he's learning from the people around him. It's just like, it's so fascinating. See, it was really well written too. I loved The Hunger Games, so it's not really very surprising to me that I loved this book too. And I can't wait to read Sunrise on the Reaping. After A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I read Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, which is the second book in the Red Rising saga. I was so obsessed with Red Rising that like I couldn't wait to continue the series. I was kind of disappointed. I'm so sad to say that because I loved Red Rising so much. I thought this whole series was going to be a 5-star series. I think that with Golden Sun, I'm probably gonna put in I already forgot everything. There were parts about this book that I really liked, and then there were parts that I just did not enjoy. I feel like they didn't make sense, and it was confusing a lot of the time. I found this book more confusing than Red Rising, which doesn't make any sense because they're set in the same world. They're talking about the same things pretty much. But it was kind of hard to follow Golden Sun, which I didn't feel that way with Red Rising. With Golden Sun, I think there was too much action for me. And I mean, it's not like I don't like action or I don't like battle scenes, but the battle scenes in Golden Sun were just not interesting to me. I liked the parts where the characters were talking and the dialogue and the scheming, the planning. Like, I like seeing Darrow trying to fit into this world that he knows nothing about. I am still going to continue the series. I am not going to stop because I feel like there's a chance that it could get better, you know? I mean, I'm curious to see how the story ends. And the next book I read was like a little novella, How the King of Elfhame Learned to Hate Stories. I really liked the Cruel Prince series. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was really good, actually. I don't know why I said pretty good. It was the first book that made me realize that I like enemies to lovers as a trope, and I feel like the Cruel Prince does that trope really well. It's like in the beginning you don't even know how they're gonna end up liking each other at all. I think the story was really good. I think the fairy world is very interesting. I hadn't read a lot of like fae novels at that point when I first read Cruel Prince, so I didn't know about how cruel they could be or how yeah, no, pretty much how cruel they can be, how mean they can be to themselves, like each other, but also to humans. I learned a lot about fae from that series. Yeah, what am I trying to say? I was a pretty big fan of the Cruel Prince series, so I was excited to read this and get a little bit of insight into King Cardan's mental space during all the events of the original series. Maybe too much time had passed since I read the original series. I kind of found it a little bit boring. I wouldn't say put me in a reading slump because it was so short. I did find some parts of it kind of interesting. I think that might go into I already forgot everything because I really did already forget everything. And I don't know what I expected because this kind of makes sense, but it is basically just the events of the original series, but from the point of view of King Cardan. And maybe it was just like a little bit too short. I didn't really care. I think the reading about the events of the first book from the perspective that you're given was enough. I feel like this book was kind of unnecessary. I think I read all of these books actually, starting with Red Rising maybe. I believe I've read all of them in October, and I do have a video where I talk about the books more in depth if you guys are interested, if you would like to, I don't know, hear me talk some more. The next book that I read in October, which was, I mean, kind of the only true like horror that I read in October. The only truly on theme book that I read for the spooky season was How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. I was enjoying it in the beginning. I remember being a little bit frustrated with some of like the dialogue between the characters because their bickering just kind of like pissed me off. I don't know why. It was kind of, I feel like one of those things where it's like, it's clearly a misunderstanding and it's kind of like a dumb one. Like if they just talked, then everything would just be figured out, you know? But it was okay in the beginning. And then you find out what's going on with the house, and I don't know, I didn't really like it at first. I didn't read this book and feel like actually scared. It's not that kind of horror. I do think that Grady Hendrix did a good job of making this concept work. A concept that when I initially found out what was going on, I was like, I don't know about this. I think by the end, I was pretty satisfied. I can't complain. I mean, I would read more Grady Hendrix books. I think I'm gonna put this in. That was cool. Because, yeah, it was cool. Okay, then the next book I read was Juniper and Thorn. This one is a little bit hard because when I read it, I did really like it. This is my first book by Ava Reed, and I know that she writes a lot of fairy tale retellings. I liked this one. It was very gothic. It was very dark. It definitely has some triggering subjects. I feel like there should be a warning. I don't know if there is, but I don't remember seeing one. But I do feel like there should be a trigger warning. There are some sensitive subjects. They obviously weren't, like, I'm not sensitive to them, so I was fine. There are definitely dark aspects to it, and I feel like a little bit heartbreaking in a way, too. Kind of when you get to, like, the peak of the the suspension. What am I saying? I feel like you really feel for the main character. I don't want to say her name because I don't know how to say her name. I remember when I was talking about this book in my October wrap up, I was so nervous about getting her name wrong. And I kind of like, I remember leaving in a part where I'm just like struggling so hard to get her name right. I feel like you really feel for her character. What happens to her is like very unfair. A lot of her life was very unfair. And I think it was beautifully written. But I don't know if I did feel like I needed a sixth tier between We'll Think About This on My Deathbed, and that was cool. I think I gave this 4 stars, and I think that is kind of around the area that I would put it here too. I don't really think about this book very much. When I was reading it, I was feeling a lot of things, and I really enjoyed it, and I think it's a great book. And if you were thinking about reading it, I feel like you should. I would recommend it. I don't think I'm going to be thinking about this book when I'm on my deathbed. That's all. I kind of regret this mistake. I ended up reading A Sorceress Comes to Call, and like I read both Juniper and Thorn and A Sorceress Comes to Call without knowing really what I was getting into, like what they were about or like anything about them really. And so I didn't know that they were both fairy tale retellings, and they're both kind of in very different styles. And so for that reason, because I read them back to back, it was so hard for me to separate them from each other and analyze them as 2 separate entities. I kept like comparing them to each other. I feel like it kind of affected how I felt about A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. I was coming out of this like very gothic, very dark fairy tale retelling, and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. Like I love this. And I go into A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. I wouldn't say expecting the same thing, but like, I mean, I guess I was kind of expecting the same thing. And then when I didn't get it, I was like, I don't know what this is. I do feel like there's very apparent plot holes, especially at the end, that maybe were intentional because of the tone that the author was trying to use. But for me, I was just like, I feel like the story doesn't really make sense. Like at the end of the day, I couldn't believe what the author was telling me. And for that reason, I was like, how are these characters believing these things? Oh god, it's so hard to talk about a book and not give spoilers. Like, I want to say more about it. Maybe I should just make a separate video, because I just feel like I have so many thoughts about this book. Since then, I've reevaluated and I've thought about it. I understand what the author was trying to do. I still feel like this book is probably just gonna go into, I already forgot everything. Or put me in a reading slump. Like, I didn't hate it. It wasn't a bad book. I just didn't like it very much. But I don't think it was so bad that I would say it put me in a reading slump. I wonder if I'm going to put any books in that category. The next book I read after that, which I think is also the last book I read in October, was The Maidens by Alex McLedes. This book is a book that I've tried to start before, and I DNF'd it. I like soft DNF'd it because I kind of knew that I was going to go back to it. I felt like it was, like, based on the synopsis, I felt like it was a book that I was going to like. But for some reason, I just, like, I couldn't get into it the first time I read it. But I tried again in October. I was, like, committed. I was going to really try to read this. Like, get at least, let's say, like, a quarter of the way in and then decide. Like, if I really don't like it, then I'll stop reading it. And I'm really glad that I did because the book does have a slow start and it drags a little bit in the beginning. But then once you get to, I forget where it is. Is it Cambridge? Hold on. So once you get to like the Cambridge campus and you kind of get more into the story, like what the actual story is about, I could not put the book down. It was so fascinating to me. It was so interesting. There's also a lot of references in the book to like Greek mythology and Greek tragedy. I found that really fascinating too. Like it made me want to read the myths again. It's a lot of Persephone and Demeter and all that fun stuff. Okay, I'm a little embarrassed. But yeah, it was so good. I don't mean this in a pretentious way, but this is gonna come off pretentious anyway. There's not a lot of books that can really surprise me, like plot-wise. I usually see things coming, and sometimes the author is giving us hints, so they're kind of making it a little bit easier for us. Is there any way for me to say this without sounding like a complete asshole? I would say like 75% of the books I read, I can usually figure out what's going on before I reach the ending, before I find out for sure. But with this book, like I did guess some of the things, but there were other things that I did not see coming. Anytime that a book does that is just really exciting to me. I don't even know if I'm going to post that part. I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm so smart. I figured it all out. But I think I'm going to put The Maidens in. That was cool. Yeah, I don't think this is a book that I'm going to be thinking about on my deathbed Funny thing is I did rate it 5 stars, which just makes me feel like the star system for rating books is really stupid. Like, do you guys like the star rating system? Another question I have is, would you still use the star rating system if we didn't have things like Goodreads or Fable? I think I'm gonna leave The Maidens in. That was cool. I really should have had a 6 tier because I feel like it is above That Was Cool, but it's below Would Think About This Book on My Deathbed. It's just like somewhere in the middle. I think I also kind of feel that way about Juniper and Thorn. But anyway, I didn't make a 6 tier, and I'm not going to make one now and refilm this whole thing. This is the only book I read in November. And the reason for that is just because November was a crazy ass month for me. The book that I read in November was Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. I think I'm going to put this into We'll Think About This on My Deathbed because I just have this feeling that, you know, the first book, I think I really loved it. It was really well written. I loved the battle scenes. Everyone talks about the battle scenes, and it's, you know, fair because they're amazing. And I also really liked the characters. But I do think that this book, because it's part of a series, it is the setup book, you know? It is the book that's setting up the story, like the meat of the story, the bulk of it. So I feel like, and this is kind of a little bit of a prediction, I guess, I feel like the second and third books are going to be way better than the first one. And I think I'm going to be thinking about this series the way that I think about the other books in this category. So for that reason, I'm going to put this and We'll Think About This on My Deathbed. But I do feel like over time, if I don't read the second and third books, I may forget about it. This was also another book that, like, there were so many twists and turns that I did not expect, and especially at the end. No, yeah, I think this book belongs in We'll Think About This on My Deathbed. The next book that I read was The Mystery of the Yellow Room by Gaston Leroux. This is, if you don't know, this is the author of Phantom of the Opera, and this was again a book I got in that same subscription box I mentioned before. By the way, this is not sponsored. It's not an ad. I don't even have the subscription anymore. So this would be a terrible ad. This was a bonus book. So I got a copy of Phantom of the Opera in that subscription box. I also got this book as a bonus. It's like a locker room mystery. It's kind of like Sherlock Holmes, Watson kind of vibes. Mystery of the Yellow Room, I think this put me in a reading slump. It made my brain hurt, and not really in a good way. It wasn't that, it was bad. I halfway through wanted to DNF it, but I'm so bad at DNFing books. Like, I will just keep reading it even if I know I'm not liking it. So then after that, I read Wuthering Heights. I was kind of regretting the decision to read another classic right after I read The Mystery of the Yellow Room. And that's only because, like, the beginning of Wuthering Heights is a little bit slow. I would probably put this in We'll Think About This on My Deathbed, especially after I started looking up what people were saying about the book and the fact that we're going to have another adaptation coming out in 2026 in February on Valentine's Day. I started getting, like, obsessed with it. First of all, when Emily Bronte wrote this novel, super scandalous. And I feel like even now, people have a hard time reading it because it is a very difficult book to read. None of the characters in this book are likable. They all suck. Everyone in this book sucks. And I think that's kind of the point. I mean, I think Emily Bronte was writing a character study probably of the people that she was around, you know? That's probably where she got the inspiration for a lot of these characters. And I just found it so fascinating to read a book that I couldn't put down, but I didn't like a single person in it. I think you can tell that I will think about this book on my deathbed. This was also a reread for me. The first time I read it, I feel like I went into it thinking what most people think, that it's a love story, and it's really not. After Wuthering Heights, I read A Man Called Ove. This was another book that I think I rated 5 stars, but I don't think I'm gonna We'll Think About This on My Deathbed because I really loved it. I think it was really well written. I really like Frederick Bachman's style of writing. This is my second Frederick Bachman book. The book I read before was Anxious People, and I really enjoyed that as well. He's writing comedy, and it's really good, but it's not just comedy. I feel like there's a lot of self-reflection for the characters in his books. There's a lot to take away from them, things that we can apply to our real lives and to our relationships with the people in our lives. I don't know if I will think about this on my deathbed. I think this is another one that I really should have had a 6th category in between these two. I could see myself kind of forgetting a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to forget Ove as a character because I really enjoyed his dialogue. But yeah, I mean, it was enjoyable. It was cute. But I don't think that it's gonna go into We'll Think About This on My Deathbed, unfortunately. After A Man Called Ove, I read A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. I feel like A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping was really good for what it was. If you're looking for a cozy romantasy that is really well written and has a really fun plot, nothing about it was unrealistic. Everything made sense, and I really liked that. Like, even the romance made sense. I don't want to give any spoilers, but damn, it's so hard to talk about books without giving spoilers. I'm probably not going to think about this book for much longer. Like, it's not going to take up space in my brain for much longer, but I do think it was really good. I think I'm going to put it into That Was Cool. Again, I think this is one of those books that's kind of hovering in between the top two tiers. This is not going to be a book that I think about on my deathbed, but as far as like cozy romances or romantasy, whatever you want to call it, however you want to categorize it, I think it's probably one of the best I've ever read. The last book that I read in 2025 was Winterwood by Shay Earnshaw. I think I gave this book 3 stars, but I think I'm going to put it into put me in a reading slump. I found myself skimming a good part of this book. There's parts that I wanted to skip, and I did end up going back and rereading them because I'm anal like that. I don't know if I'm a type A personality or a type B. I'm somewhere in the middle. Sometimes I can be a type A, and sometimes I can be a type B. I like rules and routine, but I also like not following my rules and routines. So I don't know where I fall in that category, but Winterwood by Shay Earnshaw. Let's stay on topic. I mean, I talked about this in my December wrap up, but it wasn't the right book for me at the age that I'm at right now. The problems, the conflicts in the book were just not relevant to me. I think it's better suited for a teenager. It was more dramatic than it needed to be. I mean, technically the book didn't actually put me in a reading slump, but after reading it, I just felt a little bit down. I don't know. That sounds so depressing. But I didn't mean it like that. I just mean like I regretted reading it. I regretted buying it. Not because it was a bad book, but because it was the wrong book for me. That's everything I read in 2025. It is a total of 19 books, I think. At the beginning of the year, my goal, I think, was like 52. And then halfway through the year, I realized I'm not going to be reaching 52 books. So I set my goal to 20, and I didn't even reach that. If you're feeling bad about your reading goals last year, just know that you're not alone, and you probably read more books and got closer to your goal. You probably, in comparison to me, did better. Don't worry about it too much. It's just numbers, as long as you are enjoying yourself. And I was enjoying myself a lot, crocheting. But yeah, that was everything that I read in 2025, tier ranked for you. The very interesting part about this is that I don't think my star ratings match up to how I ranked them in this tier ranking thing. I don't know what to call this. The tier maker. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.